And I wanted to start off with the most fundamental question, like who, according to you, is a designer? And I'm sure you have been questioning this a lot in your work and also practice. So, like,
Yeah, no, I feel, I mean, anyone who's in some ways contributing to a better quality of life uh, would could term him or, I mean, himself or herself a designer. Um, Mostly things are, nudges, behavioral pushes, you know, an interesting story could change someone's behavior. So I think anyone who's kind of involved in this incremental push, uh, I mean, if you're sort of designing a toothbrush, your kind of main thing would be how do I make the experience of brushing your teeth in the morning a bit better than the 300 other toothbrushes that have come before.
hmm.
So, I mean, anyone who's kind of involved in that vast gamut of pushing the needle on the quality of life.
This is Audiogyan, and I am your host, Kedar Nimkar. Welcome to a deep dive into the minds of luminaries from the Indian creative world. So you said who's improving the quality of life, but यार एक point के बाद when we keep pushing the boundary, it becomes political. You enter into different areas, right? So like, what do you think? Yeah, I mean, designer is like, even when I spoke to Uday Atwankar, he said even Rangoli is a design, but it's not like, I mean, to a certain extent, it's improving quality of life, but like very focused effort of improving quality of life really can qualify as a designer. But then how does one grow in that career, right? How do you become mature in your practice, and then what happens? How does it look like? What are your thoughts around that?
I mean, in one sense, if one is questioning the traditional role of the designer, I mean, I
Hmm.
think one of the things that we need to be very aware of is that it's a very new role. It's like maybe 45, 50 years old. Industrial Revolution, there was factory surplus. You needed a few people to kind of, you know, uh, understand the market better, have few technical skills, and that's where the profession was born in some sense. It's not a very old profession by any way. I mean, it's a life skill. I mean, maybe earlier everyone would have been a designer, and it's one of the things that you do. I mean, if you assume that everyone is born creative and then the education system or whatever slowly beats it out of you, then in that sense, like it's a very wide definition. And I would argue for the wide definition. I would actually say that it's better to have a very wide, inclusive definition because what's happened is over time, because designers have become more and more of a sort of a rare species in some sense that you kind of keep on building an ivory tower and then you yourself are living in it and you protect it with all kinds of jargon, right? Like you start speaking the language of curators or you start speaking this kind of very verbose explanations for everything that you do. Like a cement wall is celebrated like it's, some kind of I don't know, some piece of modern art or something. And
Hmm.
over time you start constructing this identity, which is primarily where we get our validation from, right? And this is a very slippery slope because finally, if I'm saying that, like, how would you say it's a job well done, right? At the end of
Hmm.
it, if someone tells you, man, that was an amazing job, what are they basing that on? Are they basing it on how many top 50 lists you're on? Or are they basing it on, did you get featured in the front page of AD? Or did you, or how much did you bill for that project? Like, where does your validation come from for
Hmm.
someone to say you did a good job? And if you question that, it always brings you down to very fundamental things like that. Did you improve the quality of life of that person who you were designing for? Or, that's one way of validation which is outside of the commerce of design. And
Hmm.
uh, I think that's what we should pretty much be fighting for in a world like we're living in. Like, I mean, if you look outside your window, the world is burning. And then you have like, the design profession, which is like masturbating about the color of some wall or, how amazing someone's powder room is looking like. I mean, it's a sort of some sort of a divorce from reality, basically. But I think if you concern yourself with quality of life, then your definition becomes so much wider and so much more enriching. You're able to take on larger problems than, the color of someone's bathroom wall.
Very interesting. So, because then, is it safe to say that it will be only good if you're bringing in value?
Yeah, for sure.
No,
Otherwise, there's no difference.
no,
There's
but
no difference
then,
between
but
being a serial killer and a designer.
no, but then most of the professions bring value, right? Like there's commerce who's like uplifting the poor and whatever. Like there are different people who are like adding value. What's the designer's value add
I mean, to do it well, I
essentially?
guess. I mean, to do it in a way that is aesthetically pleasing, to do it in a way that is pushing the needle on not just value of life, but also on aesthetics, on having a better looking environment to live in. I mean, one is not saying that value needs to only be quantified. I mean, it's not
Hmm.
a quantifiable sort of a thing. It's also a qualitative, experiential value. Uh, so, I mean, anyone who's pushing the needle on culture in some sense, pushing culture in
Hmm.
a way that you feel culture should go.
Hmm.
Uh, I mean, it is in the widest sense some form of design activity.
Correct. Correct.
It's just not tied to commerce. That's why it
Hmm.
feels unfamiliar as an idea.
Hmm. Hmm.
You're not making money out of that thought process.
Got it. Got it.
But that thought process is 45, 50 years old. It's not very old. We're not born like this.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
We are
Yeah.
very optimistic, amazing people, man. Like I mean, this cynicism only comes in from having very narrow validation uh, metrics, like how many listeners do you have or how many people follow you. I mean, those kind of metrics are right now where people are drawing their validation from as human beings.
Hmm.
Like you'll put yourself on some sort of a ladder saying that basically so hajar, whatever, some 100,000 followers. And
1 million followers. Huh?
yeah, but you don't realize the size of that group. Like 1 million followers it's the size of like it's four times the size of NH7,
Hmm.
right? NH7 is 25,000 people.
Hmm.
Imagine you are standing on a stage with a mic. You have to say something meaningful to a crowd that is four times the size of the main stage at NH7.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you have a mic like that, would you tell them what you ate for breakfast, or would you tell them that you like some kind of whiskey or something? I don't think we've understood the importance of addressing a group that size.
Hmm.
Like a primate brain, which is what we have, can address meaningfully a group of 150 people. That's the limit, neurological limits.
Okay.
So
Haha.
when you have like whatever 8 million followers, I mean, we don't even know what that means like to talk to 8 million people.
Hmm.
16 million is the population of Goa.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe certain leaders might know, but I think their job is about talking. Anyways,
Yeah, yeah,
not
they
that.
understand it. I mean, you understand it and abuse it. So, I mean, there is an understanding for sure.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
how do
Hmm.
you? So, I mean, if the core focus is to improve quality of life and you have the chance to talk to a million people every day, what would you tell those people, right? I mean, that
Yeah.
becomes
Yeah.
very, very important.
Correct. 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 Yeah. And I've
Which is
also
why I love
wanted
what
to.
you do, man.
Hmm?
Which is
Thank
why I love
you.
what you do.
Thank you. Thank you.
तू ही
Yeah.
है
No.
भैया,
So.
तू ही है.
नहीं, ये काट देंगे हम. ठीक है. So when you design, you spoke about also aesthetics and bunch of other things come along with it. And what I have seen, at least in my conversations in the last 6 7 years with different people, they have enriched themselves by like going broad in terms of having, as I was watching Doshi sir's video, and he's saying be more porous, like just respect and be
Yeah.
humble and just be open, right? So you're absorbing everything. And I saw that recently. I've not been following for very long, but recently saw your kind of work where you're engaging with young talent, especially I think Prathamesh Jaju.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So
Astrophotography.
like
Yeah.
yeah. So what is the reason for you to particularly go so wide and as we say keep expanding the understanding of different dimensions and then enrich yourself? Like why is that required, especially, and is this required for a designer specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. No, so I feel, I think if you're looking for commonality, you'll find it everywhere. So that's the base kind of assumption. Like for example, this amazing collaboration happened with Prathamesh. We met for the first time. Like I just seen a few of his pictures, and then we kind of tried to do like an interesting kind kind of a astrophotography meets AI kind of a experiment. So we were trying out some stuff on the side. But uh, okay, this may sound a bit abstract, but like I mean, for example, what does an image um of a nebula or a galaxy, for example, which is like, whatever, 22 22 light years away or 22 million light years away, whatever, these astronomical numbers. Like,
Hmm.
what does it mean for a human brain to be able to see the birth and death of a star? Like, we
Hmm.
are not born to witness this, right? Like, in terms of the hunter-gatherer evolutionary kind of lifestyle, like, I'm not sure if nature intended a certain primate species to have that much technology that they could look into space and see the birth and death of stars, or look into the heart of the galaxy and see the black hole in the center, right? It is doing something to our brains, right?
Hmm.
It's kind of rewiring our brains when you uh, are able to witness these cosmic events, or when you look through an electron microscope and you see the gap between two atoms. Uh, I mean, it's augmentation to some next level, right? And this is
Yeah.
just 2024. I can imagine like in 2300, what kind of events we're going to be able to witness using the tools that we've developed. At the base of this is the same kind of inquiry of quality of life, that are you happy with being blessed with a primate intelligence, or would you be open to expanding your consciousness to a level where you can see these cosmic events, or looking through the James Webb telescope and seeing into deep space and deep time and whatever, seeing microwave radiation that is the remnants of the Big Bang. Like, these are all things that we can see today,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And what is it doing to your brain? It is essentially rewiring your neurology. Like, every single astronaut who comes back to Earth after some time in space, they undergo something called the overview effect. And it gives you a deep appreciation of the fragility of the planet.
Hmm.
Because you see the Earth as a glowing blue ball, and all around it you see the hostile black environment of space.
Yeah.
And then over there you see that the atmosphere of the Earth is the thickness of a fingernail.
Hmm.
And when you come back to Earth, you will never ever burn a fossil fuel with the same gay abandon that we would do it when you were on the surface, right? Because you've seen the planet from a certain perspective, your neurology has shifted, and you become a conservationist because you have fallen deeply in love with the planet,
Hmm.
right? Now imagine the shift in quality of life between what Prathamesh Jaju's images are doing, at least to my brain, is making me fall deeply in love with the cosmos. And you become a kinder person. You become someone who can practice better. You become someone who can overlook the traffic. There's a certain kind of shift that happens when you're
Beautiful.
deeply immersed in this kind of image making. So for me,
Beautiful.
it was finding comparison between like the stuff that I'm trying to do and what he's trying to do, and we connect on a neurological kind of exploration, because what his images are doing to consciousness, I would love to do through spaces.
Wow, very fascinating. In fact, this is going to be a very different episode because I'm going to plug in the future episode now. So, just last week for this series, I interviewed Sushmita Mohanty, who's a spaceship
Oh wow,
designer,
yeah.
and we had a good chat about this. And she said that I encourage a lot of entrepreneurs to go to like 400 kilometers above Earth and look from there, and you will see a different Earth altogether. Your perspectives and your wiring might change, and it has
Will
changed for
change
a lot
for
of
sure.
people. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, absolutely, and
Cool.
irreversibly.
Yeah, yeah. Is it? I think it's just when the magnitude is seen, you become more humble. I think what I'm going through personally is kind of a similar journey, but it's more to do with meditation, where you you
Yeah,
you just look
absolutely,
inside. Yeah, you look inside
absolutely.
and uh, see the yeah, fragility of this body. Like everything is changing at every second.
Awesome.
Cool. Um, Okay, so based on these exploration, what I was looking at your recent talk at, I think, ID Museum or something, but I wanted to pick on that, and I am very fascinated with this Elil Serinen's famous line. Always design a thing considering its larger context, right? A chair in a room in a house, environment, city plan, so on and so forth. So, what's your take on this? And you have been tinkering around rhizomatic thinking and kind of questioning the pyramidic or whatever, like the pyramid kind of thinking. So what's happening at that level from a designer's lens again? Like what avenues can open up for a designer? How can one start thinking about it, or how can one approach to this method of thinking and what it is?
Awesome. Cool. Um, yeah, so I think, like I said, I think it's a very new profession. I think we're also still finding our feet in terms of what a designer is supposed to do in the world, and what are we here for? What are these skill sets mean in a world where slowly the very act of coming up with ideas and the creative impulse is slowly being eroded by artificial intelligence. Like you can make a lot more interesting connections using a machine-based intelligence than a human intelligence. And we're just starting off this kind of revolution. We're at the base of a very, very tall skyscraper of amazing tech that's, due to really come down like a hose pipe very soon. So, but I view it fairly optimistically. I don't think anyone's afraid of that kind of hose pipe. It's a situation where one has to, whatever, take off your clothes and dance in the water when it comes, right? So I think there's a situation where, like, I mean, you spoke about pyramidical thinking and rhizomatic thinking. Pyramidical thinking is endemic in the industrial kind of cycles. Like you will have a shop floor which reports to one sort of junior manager reports to a senior manager will report to some sort of shop floor manager. Uske upar there'll be some two other senior managers sitting. Then there'll be a CEO. There'll be a whatever. So there's this kind of a pyramid, and it ends at the top. Now, what we've done in the design practice is take that same kind of thinking and apply it to our practices. So you have, say, a principal at the top of the design studio, maybe one or two people, whatever. Then you have junior architects here. And I mean, it kind of flows down the same way. And it's so normative that we have never actually questioned it, that why does this need to be the way it is? And what happens is that, I mean, the sad part is that not only does uh, I mean, not only do decision making flow in a pyramid, everything flows in that pyramid.
Hmm. Hmm.
Capital flows in that pyramid, resources flow in that pyramid, cash, credit, uh, who signs on your awards. I mean, all of that is channeled up to the top of the pyramid. The people at the base of the pyramid are either forgotten or ignored or, mostly sidelined. So design has taken the industrial paradigm and put it into their own practices without thinking too much about it. Banks use it, governments use it. Uh, you have the same kind of hierarchical systems, right? But I think and the kind of climate crisis and the things that we see around us, uh, wars, genocides, I mean, you name it. To my mind, a lot of them stem from this same model that has been applied where inordinate amount of power has been placed at the top of the pyramid with zero accountability, right? You
Hmm.
can trace down financial crashes to this. You can trace down wars, like one unhinged leader can drag the entire pyramid into a reality of no one's choosing, right? So essentially,
Right.
it's a broken system, but we've been manifesting it uh, kind of over and over again without too much application of thinking that why is this the kind of world that we live in?
Hmm.
But what's interesting is that in the 70s there was this amazing book that was written by Deleuze and Guattari called The Thousand Plateaus, and they introduced a different kind of thinking. It's called rhizomatic thinking in the sense that you think flatter and wider rather than thinking in a pyramid. So
Hmm.
your thoughts don't flow in flow charts. Your thoughts have to flow a bit like how water occupies a landscape. You kind of flow flat and you know across. So and what this does is it shifts the onus of how intelligence emerges, right? In a pyramid, you have to make things happen,
Hmm.
right? There's a certain activity that has to be done. There's a certain cause and effect that has to be set in motion. And the prevailing idea is to make things happen. And this is what is taught in design school. Come up with an idea, go through the process, make things happen. In the rhizomatic way, you allow things to emerge, right? So
Hmm.
it's a fundamentally different, it's the way forests grow. There's no hierarchies, there are no kind of things. There is a certain resource, things competing for that resource, but it's growing from a much flatter hierarchy. That's the way a bamboo grove is created. There's no center of a bamboo grove, right? You can't cut one bamboo and say, "Chal, grove ho gaya." You can cut a tree, you can't cut a bamboo grove. You can't destroy
Hmm.
mushrooms because they have massive interconnected rhizomatic mycelial networks. When you have brain surgery, you can take out a part of the brain. Another part of the brain had the redundancy to fill up that cognitive gap and take over like nothing has gone wrong because the brain is a rhizome.
Mm,
The internet
mm.
is a rhizome, right? The
Correct.
internet is copies and copies and copies of things. So essentially, there is a certain kind of thinking out there which has not been taught and not been curriculum. It's not been put into a curriculum. We don't know how to teach rhizomatic thinking. And this is the base, the core of my work right now is to kind of curriculumarize. Sorry, I'm not saying this really weirdly. Curriculamize rhizomatic thinking.
And
I
have
mean,
you like I'm sure you must have practice doing it in practice with say Prathamesh or collaboration is almost a
yeah,
similar format, right? Like,
it is.
but
So it's
yeah.
promiscuously collaborative. Like if you're in a rhizomatic mode,
Hmm.
the way a rhizome propagates is by constantly building new nodes, right?
Hmm.
Whenever you have water which is sprinkled on a bamboo grove, there will be an underground shoot that is sent in search of that water. It will spout a node and a new bamboo shoot will come out of the ground. This is how rhizomes propagate by building new connections, right? So your brain builds new connections, you build intelligence. Now, your brain is not following a flow chart, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
How is intelligence coming into our brains? It is emergent, it's an emergent property of the prefrontal cortex rhizome network.
Hmm.
But we've not taught this in design schools. We don't teach how to collaborate. We don't teach how to build collectives. We don't teach how to work with a group of 100 people. What we are taught is how do you get out of design school, make a quotation, make invoices, put yourself on top of the pyramid, sign all the drawings and the stuff that's leaving the office, and put your name on everything, basically. So
Hmm.
the person who can be at the top of the pyramid is the one who's, whatever, given awards and stuff. But
Yeah.
you're pissing on the rest of the pyramid essentially.
Mm. But that's more to do with across the education system itself, right? Like
Yeah.
you've designed it, and then like in US, it's gone to the other extreme where everyone is like a hero, which is kind of like then creating weaker and weaker societies, right? So how do you like find that right balance? I mean, this is just off topic, but
No, I think and we have as a society always been that way. This pyramidical thinking is only after the I would say the Greek age. I mean, if before that you look at the rest of humanity, we lived in smaller, interconnected tribal sort of small groups. Like you
hmm,
hunter-gatherers, you were foraging for resources. There were no clear hierarchies. There were no kings. One can say that agriculture has put all this stuff in motion, right?
hmm,
That when you have the idea of surplus, when you have a farm and you have a existence, you have 10 grains extra that make you a bit richer than the guy on the left. You start building walls, you start calling territory yours, you start building boundaries, you start building ledgers and bookkeeping systems, and that's how pyramids are created from a completely flat society.
hmm,
So if you are able to question the way people come together and why people cooperate in the first place, what is the role of money in our lives? Does money actually give you validation or not? Uh, I think these are things that can be taught in schools.
hmm, hmm. In fact, in your curriculum, if you want to like plug in one like one line, not a chapter. I wanted to like just recollect one TED talk which I had seen. His name is Mariappan Jawaharlal, and he's a teacher.
Mhm.
And he said the best thing that I've done is, and that's also kind of escapism in a funny way. He says, "What do you think?" So there's a little girl and her toy is not working, and she comes to the sir and says like the toy is not working, and so he asks us the other way around, like, what do you think, why is it not working? So she thinks and she says like maybe the batteries are off. So this girl like removes the battery and puts in another toy to see whether there's a problem in the battery or the toy, right? Like now this is organic, as opposed to
Yeah,
this guy was thinking like, okay, now I am at the top of the pyramid. I'll tell her how
yeah,
to
मैं
use an amp
दिखाता हूँ.
meter.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So instead of
yeah.
teaching how to test a
No,
battery.
so this is actually, I mean, this is the key. Like, basically, there's a metaphor in pyramidical thinking where you become the sage on the stage, right? There's the
Hmm,
stage, and you are the sage, and your job is now to give pravachan.
hmm,
But rhizomatic thinking makes you the guide on the side, right? So you are essentially not in a hierarchical position. You will walk with the person who you're walking with. I mean, it builds empathy, it builds a certain sense of camaraderie, which we've lost as a society when we kind of exist in these pyramids. Because then the idea of the pyramid is what brings out the idea of upwardly mobile, the idea of the haves and the have-nots. I mean, all of these emerge from a unequal society.
Hmm. Hmm. Actually, my next question is because of my color of being a pyramid education, is then like, is it required for your other nodes to be equally, say, competent or creative, or like like at which level, or you're just like इसको
No, I
ये
mean,
आता है तो उससे वो करवा लो टाइप्स
yeah,
ऐसा.
I mean, how would you be if you were in a jazz band,
Hmm.
right? Suppose
Hmm.
you're a great vocalist. I mean, you don't need to only find other great vocalists to learn from. You will find someone who's an interesting drummer. So be someone who's, playing at a traffic signal, someone who's got an interesting sound. And you'll create a sound with this group of six, seven people. And that particular collaboration will have a certain flavor, and that collaboration will have a certain sound, sonic quality, which you put out into the world. And other people will listen to it and like it and enjoy it. And if it means something to them and if it adds quality of life to their kind of quality of life, but you will disband and you will create a new jazz band with someone else who is playing a tin drum in an alley, and you will meet some, like a choir player, some sort of a harp player in a church, and then you'll create a different jazz band with them. That relationship will have its own quality and its own sonic quality, which you will put out into the world. I would look at this kind of collaborative framework more like a jazz band, like where you have multiple collaborations. What you have is your own voice,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And you will bring that same voice to multiple different collaborations. Likewise, those people are also part of different circles, because they may be one person may be, say, collaborating with a spoken word poet. That person may have a friend who's doing visuals in some nightclub. That person may have someone who's doing robotic assemblies for inflating balloons as part of music, and that will be a whole different project, right? But
Hmm.
when you zoom out and look at all these relationships from the top, what you see is a rhizome. You see a flat hierarchy of collaborating groups within themselves. And I feel it's a much, much more optimistic view of how we should inhabit this planet.
Hmm. Hmm. But it will still hold the vibe attracts tribe kind of a sentiment, right? Like you will still gel or vibe with the person who's kind of equally interested in that collaboration.
Yeah, I mean, at a personal level, yes. But when you zoom out at a macro level, your third circle of influence will overlap with many other third circles of influence,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? It's just that we've not, see, if you're taught this in a curriculum, that how do you collaborate with your complete opposite,
Hmm.
right? When a dialogue begins between two polar opposites, what you're really creating is spectrums.
Correct.
You're collapsing binaries into spectrums, right? So and as soon as you create a spectrum out of a binary, you are creating thousands of opportunities in the middle for things to exist in the middle,
Coexist.
right? Like, so I mean, if there's a reason that the political right doesn't talk to the political left, what is really required is a sensible, respectful dialogue between the two to collapse that binary of left and right and create a more central spectrum. That, okay, I have these kind of beliefs, I have these kind of beliefs, but at the core, we still all want a great country, right? We want to live in a great, respectful, amazing, stimulating, inspiring, peaceful reality, and that is a common value between everyone.
Yeah.
So if you're able to bring down the discussion to quality of life, you start collapsing binaries. Like, you start asking better questions, basically.
Hmm.
We are not
It's
only defined
I'm
by that one ideology that separates us, we are defined actually by the 100 ideologies that unite us,
hmm.
right? But it's in nobody's interest to allow spectrums to be kind of experienced, or because it's not, you know, it doesn't
Is it
create
like,
the friction that
like
you need.
I'll yeah, I'll go a little philosophical here just for my personal curiosity, coming back to the thought process. Is the embracing of this spectrum um not very easy because it's not taught, it's conditioned, or it's inherently very difficult to like embrace the gray?
No, it's been beaten out of us. I mean, I think we lived in a much grayer society than we have right now, and you can see the difference every year on year. Like, we were in
Hmm.
a grayer society 10 years ago than we are in 2024.
Hmm.
I mean, you don't have to wear your identity on your sleeve anymore. You don't have to. Like throughout my 10 years in school, I had no clue that I was a Muslim.
Hmm.
But here I'm
Hmm.
reminded every day that you're a Muslim. And that's not what defines me, right? I mean, I have a whole list of a whole list of other identities that I would rather subscribe to than uh, my view on one particular topic.
Correct.
So I feel like we and polarization is great for the pyramid,
Hmm. Hmm.
but
It helps
the
to
freedom comes when
control.
you reject the pyramid, right? The freedom comes when you declare sovereignty that I am my own sovereign. Like
Yeah.
I am not part of any pyramid. And what other networks can I build on my own? So like for me, like work with the Goa Collective or the Bandra Collective, or with partners like Gresham Fernandez or Avinash and Prathamesh and all these like amazing people you meet. These relationships are much, much more interesting and flatter in hierarchy and more stimulating, and it pushes me in interesting directions than say the other maybe pyramids that I'm part of.
Hmm. Very interesting. Cool. We'll change tracks a bit, and I wanted to come to the second half, which is also the last half of the thing. Is that you spoke about in that same talk about intergenerational kindness, and also you spoke about that in your slow fire slash rapid fire round. Uh, and giving that Oxford example, right? Can you elaborate on that? Like, what is this practice, or what have been your insights, and especially now as designers, it's very much required, right? Like I was just editing your earlier video which I took in 2022, where I said like, is it do you like do we as designers need to pause and reflect, and you gave a very interesting example of like the entire country not reflecting, and just like the Holocaust is happening and bunch of other things you spoke about. But what's with this intergenerational kindness that you spoke about, giving the
Hmm.
Oxford example?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's a very interesting area of work. I think like we used to live in a society across the world, which was like say 600-700 years ago, which thought long term in the sense that we had an idea of projects that would outlive us, right? What's happened is so for example, if you're building a cathedral typically takes say 200 to 250, 300 years to build, and some of the most like say Sagrada Familia has been built for 250 or whatever. I mean, since Gaudi and uske pehle bhi tha, and there was so it's these are long projects, right? It's more than a human lifetime. Uh, when you start digging the foundations for the cathedral, you know that it's your grandchildren which will finish it,
Hmm.
right? But there is a certain meaning to that work. It's not that you need to see the end of that work to derive meaning from it.
Beautiful.
Similarly, there's this lovely example in the Oxford College. Like they have a part of the campus called the New College. It's very old, so it's not new really. It's just called New College. It's like somewhere 600 700 saal purana.
Hmm.
And then they had these large oak beams in one of their spaces. Now there was some student, maybe I think maybe 80, 90 years ago, there's some student who was walking around with a magnifying glass on top of those beams, and he found a massive beetle infestation in all the beams. So the beams had rotten from inside, and he raised this to the college. So the dean of the college, these guys are freaking out. Okay, matlab itna lamba jhad, like, these are like 2 feet by 2 feet by 40 feet beams. So where will you find straight oak trees like that, right?
Yeah.
They don't grow. I mean, you have to then forage in forests and all of that. So they were freaking out. They were like, okay, this whole structure is going to come down. They called up the forestry department of Oxford College. So some student had the idea that let's ask in a forestry department to see कि अगर कुछ है तो. So this forester comes back, and it seems he has a meeting with the dean, and he's saying, so they're telling him that this has happened. Beetles are eating up these beams. Like can you suggest? He's saying, we were wondering when you would call us.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it seems 400 years ago, someone had planted a forest of oak trees. 40 oak trees were planted when they were installing the beams in the college, because they know कि 400 साल के बाद उसके अंदर beetle आने वाला है. It's going to get destroyed. And that time they will need this forest of oak trees,
Beautiful.
right? Now, this is intergenerational kindness that you think
Fascinating.
today for 400 years later. And this is the kind of thinking that we need to be taught again. This is the thinking that has been beaten out of us by education system. We do not think beyond uh, an Instagram post that has to go out every day, or you don't think about like, I mean, I don't think any one of us has a 10-year plan even, like, forget about a 400-year plan. So I think, like for example, we know, all of us know that the building industry, architecture contributes almost 40% to the greenhouse gas emissions that industry creates, right? Uh, but we're not stopping to pour concrete. None of us
Mm-hmm.
are stopping to pour concrete. There are 6,000 projects going on in Bombay right now, including these kind of massive ecological disasters like the coastal road and these new ceilings and all that. I mean, it's just grey infrastructure. We've completely forgotten about green infrastructure. There
Yeah.
is going to be a time in our future as a society that we are going to have to stop pouring concrete, either by legislation or just by choking and killing ourselves in cities, right?
Mm-hmm.
The only viable alternative to build homes on shifting soils is actually wooden piles, right? Which is the foundation of Venice. Like Venice is built on a marsh. They've banged in local ironwoods into the marsh in such a way that they're extremely compressed together, and they become petrified. They become like stone. They stop rotting because it's underwater. This
Mm-hmm.
particular kind of ironwood. In Goa, there's an ironwood called Zambo, right? It's a local tree, and it's the exact material that we will require in the next 40, 50 years to be able to replace concrete, to build on sand. Because there is going to be massive tidal variations with climate change, with seawater ingress. A lot of us are going to be living on marshy lands which are flooded, say, 6 months of the year, which
Mm-hmm.
is a reality in many countries, not like a new thing. Venice is thriving. It's a cultural center which is on completely marshland.
Correct.
So it's not that we need to have this dystopic, messed up view of the future. The future will have a lot of problems, but it'll also have a lot of opportunities. If we have to build cities in that way, we need to plant those Zambo forests today
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so that they will be ready for harvesting in the next 40, 50 years when we need that material. But who's planting these Zambo forests, right? So essentially, because we've outsourced our vision and our collective generational knowledge to people at the top of the pyramid who have no idea what they're doing because they have only a 5-year plan,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
which is pegged to an election cycle, right? So they don't have any 10-year, 20-year, 40-year, 50-year, 100-year plan. But people are our kind of people who were thinking this way 700 years ago, right? So
Mm.
what happened? Like, where's the generation loss,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So
I
where's this
remember.
myopia coming in from?
Correct, correct. I remember when I was like in ninth or 10th standard, at least I could hear some sort of a thing that there's a 10-year plan and 20-year plan. At least I could hear. Now I just look at the next
24 hours.
inauguration happening
जब
everywhere.
तक जिंदा रहने वाले के नहीं.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I
Uh,
think this, and it's not a accident that these things are happening. I feel a lot of the myopia is pushed onto us by our media cycles, by living in the city environment, by being on a constant treadmill. Our
hmm,
sense of time has completely gone ballistic, right? We're on industrial time.
correct, correct,
Like, we
correct.
eat when the clock says it's time to eat, and we sleep when the clock says it's time to sleep.
Yeah.
But I think we've lost that. Like, I mean, tribes in the Andaman still have a galactic time. They
Hmm,
know when currents come back every 12 years to bring raw materials. Now, I mean, how do they are in touch with currents basically because their survival depends on it,
hmm,
right? It's a
hmm.
12-year cycle.
Wow. Hmm.
But
You want to talk a little bit about it? I saw that in the video, but yeah, it would be great.
yeah, I mean, there are a lot of these coastal communities which have a very different sense of time. Like Bali, for example, has 21 calendars.
Wow. Hmm.
Right? They follow one calendar, which is a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Maybe the tourist industry and the Airbnb industry follows that calendar. But if you're a
Hmm.
farmer, you have access to 21 different calendars. You have the solar calendar, the lunar calendar, the eclipse calendar. There are market calendars. There are seasonal calendars, which are to do with crop cycles and farming and recycling water. For example, there's a separate calendar on. Currents have a different calendar. You have 21 internested calendars, so our
Wow.
brain is able to hold 21 different unique ideas of time.
Yeah.
But we choose this I don't know, this crazy depleted kind of way of looking at time, right?
Wow. But like, yeah, once you taste the, yeah, the choice, Yeah, it's just like fascinating. Anyway, and then I remember in like back when we did our episode, you spoke about India Futures project, but then I wanted to just like now take it forward and ask like like what's the designer's role in kind of like having this speculative fiction idea or looking at future narratives. Like right now we are struggling with even getting a good logo for Make in India. So मतलब हम कहाँ पे है, and you are like putting out these narratives. What do you, is there any intention, is there any thought process of changing this mental models, and like then how can designers be further open to it?
So it's a great question. I think there are three kind of large ideas, right, around this. One is, um, okay, let me take you back to Akbar Birbal, right?
Ah,
So you
ah,
have this Akbar Birbal stories that all of us grew up with,
correct.
right? So, I mean, there's obviously a bunch of stories about Akbar's forgetfulness and about the fact that he's this power-hungry king, and I mean, obviously benevolence and all that, but still like a bit unhinged and needs to be controlled. Uh, in comes Birbal, who is the voice of sanity and the voice of reason. He has the ear of the emperor, and he can say the truth that nobody else will dare to say. He can speak the truth to power in a way that doesn't get himself beheaded,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Many court jesters have been beheaded in the UK and all, but they've gone one step further and like made fun of the queen or done some one thoda only extra and then
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
they've been executed. But this guy managed to be the brightest gem in the Navratna and using wit and wisdom and humor was able to nudge the king to do the right thing, right? So I think what we've lost in contemporary civilization is the role of the fool, right?
Hmm.
The fool is able to say truth, to talk truth to power in a way that nobody else can, because the fool has invested enough time to get an overview. He's able to play certain relationships against each other and come up with an optimistic connection of dots, which the rest of the court has not seen before, and which has to be now portrayed to the king, saying, "This is how you conduct yourself, and this is what how you solve this unsolvable problem," right?
Hmm.
So that's one sort of idea in terms of how the grammar of the fool has been removed from our idea of governance. Like we don't have a fool in the Rajya Sabha, for example. So no one is able to speak up truth to power.
Hmm.
You speak truth to power and you lose your head, right?
Yeah, actually, are all
Uh,
fools, but anyway.
no, this is a very
Yeah, yeah,
deep
got
technique.
what.
It's
Yeah, yeah,
it's
I got your
essentially
point.
yeah, yeah.
Correct. In fact,
Uh,
Vidushak Varun Grover, who's a stand-up comedian,
yeah,
lyricist,
I
yeah,
love him, man.
he,
He's one of my
yeah,
favorite human beings alive today. Wow, he's
correct, correct,
amazing.
correct.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
yeah. So
incredible.
he, in fact, one of his talk, he explained this entire setup of having a contrarian view or somebody who challenges the power, but is can be dismissed because he's considered as a Vidushak or a fool. Yeah, yeah.
Lovely.
Sorry,
Yeah,
continue.
it's very powerful.
Yeah.
The second idea is, I think, in neurology, it comes from the way our brains perceive fear, right? If like what happens to your brain when you're, say, a tiger jumps at you? At that point, you lose all your faculty of, there's no reasoning. Okay, does this guy look a bit dangerous? Does he look hungry? Or does he not? Or should I run or
Hmm.
should I not? I mean, your brain kicks in and says, "Man,
Bhagwan.
बचना है तो भाग."
Hmm.
Right? So that's essentially not your prefrontal cortex. That's your amygdala, your reptilian brain. It's the old brain, right? The
Hmm.
old brain kicks in and says, "Run if you want to save your life. Don't think about this too much. Bhag." Right?
Hmm.
So your body gets into action, you run and you save yourself. And this was essential skills when we were evolving on the savannah, where every small rustle in the leaves was a sign of impending danger. Right? So it
Hmm.
served us well for a long time. What's happening now is that the rustling in the leaves has been replaced by the media environment, right?
Hmm.
So essentially, you have someone on primetime television fear mongering constantly. He's always rustling the leaves and saying, "ये खतरा होने वाला है, ये खतरे में, वो खतरे में, this is happening, that is happening." So it's essentially firing up your amygdala all the time. Your amygdala is on overdrive. You are constantly in a fight or flight mode.
Correct.
right? So I think Fox News did this thing very amazingly in the Gulf War, where everyone was yellow alert, orange alert, red alert, yellow orange, orange alert, red. There was this whole like war situation created on television, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you look out of the window, there are people playing in the street and birds was flying out, but television खोलेगा तो it's like tat, 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 right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's a very well worked out philosophy. It works really well on our neurologies because it's creating a very, very tribalistic kind of a xenophobic atmosphere, right? What happens when you are on fear is you take conservative decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't vote for change when you're afraid. You will vote for familiarity. You will vote for nostalgia. You will vote for someone who says "Make America Great Again," right?
Mm-hmm.
The again word is the key in this. Everyone's interested in Make America, but he's saying Make America Great Again. Nostalgia. You vote for comfort. You are familiar with the idea of a great America. Vote for it again. मैं तेरे को दूंगा वो. Right. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
it's a very very well worked out script, and is followed by most kind of despotic politicians
Mm-hmm.
across the world. So it's not a new playbook. It's something which repeats itself. Now that's them engaging your amygdala. What bypasses amygdala and what kickstarts your prefrontal cortex is humor. If you're able to laugh at a situation, your prefrontal cortex kicks in, your amygdala is suppressed. You have a whole new hormonal makeup in your brain. It is a neurologically different brain from a brain on fear and a brain on humor. This is
Mm-hmm.
why the role of the stand-up comedian or the fool in society is crucial, because you're able to laugh at a reality and say, "This is not what I want," right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You essentially are able to see the ridiculousness in the situation that you've been presented with. You vote for this
Correct.
guy, vote for that guy. Why should I vote for these two people? What is the system that has created a left and a right, and then that entire left is represented by this guy, and the entire right is represented by this guy, and I have to click a button? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
does that make me, right? What kind of agency do I have?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So it's the illusion of choice. And the prefrontal cortex, if you're able to laugh at this illusion of choice, you're liberated. You don't need to be part of this system at all,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, you can dream of different realities. And this is, I think, the kind of role that speculative fiction can play for design and architecture. Firstly, you understand that you are in a violent profession. Every time you dig a foundation, you are eroding topsoil. Every time you pour concrete, you have a massive carbon footprint. You understand these things first, right? These
Mm-hmm.
are ugly truths that we refuse to accept. Like, that's a very violent profession, man. If you've seen a house being constructed, it's a travesty on the earth. And then people touching some raw concrete walls, like, "Ye to matlab aisa." It's like sensual and raw, and I mean, it's I mean, forgotten how to laugh at ourselves, right? We've just like taken ourselves too seriously, man.
Mm-hmm.
And to a point where there's no reality anymore. Like, I mean, you're in this kind of uh, really, really dysfunctional kind of environment. Like, you open up any one of these lifestyle magazines, there's a continuing theme of travel, right? In every single apartment, that this is inspired by Bali or inspired by Kerala or inspired by. Finally, you're in some like 300 floor building in Bombay. You open the air outside, you get asthma. लेकिन घर के अंदर it's like Bali and
Yeah.
Kerala tiles and some Atanguri tile and some terrazzo flooring and all, which is essentially telling your brain that you're on vacation,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I can walk barefoot in my house, so it's like खिड़की नहीं खोलने का, बाहर नहीं देखने का, अंदर you're on vacation.
Correct.
So,
It's super sad.
I mean, essentially, that's what the profession has been reduced to.
Hmm.
And we should not be accepting this reality. This is not the limit to which a human brain is able to contribute. Like, the color and texture of someone's balcony is really not what we should be concerned about. When the reality outside is like, what? I mean, what is going on? Will you engage in the quality of air in the city, or will you engage in the quality of construction happening in the city? Will you actually say anything about what is going to happen to the Mahalakshmi race course? Will you do anything about any of those things, even if they are thought experiments?
यार बट मैं ना थोड़ा सा अभी लाइक आई एम जस्ट चैलेंजिंग अ लिटिल बिट एंड दिस इज बीन माय कांस्टेंट स्ट्रगल यार दीज आइडियाज आई एम फैसिनेटेड विद जब मेरा रोटी कपड़ा और मकान सॉर्टेड है तो लाइक यहाँ पे सॉर्टेड है एंड देन देयर इज लाइक अ बिगर साइकिल टू कवर where if you look at the other spectrum, like I've been engaging with certain conversations where I say that oh, the coastal project is probably like not a great idea, but then everybody's saying, dude, like it will employ so many people, the commute will be fast, and a bunch
Yeah.
of things, right? Like you must have like faced this at a very
Yeah,
operational
you
level
can. I
also.
mean, there are simple questions to ask when this kind of things are there. It's for whom,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Like it's making the commute fast for whom? 0.4% of Bombay's population.
Hmm.
53% of Bombay's population uses the local trains,
Yeah.
right? 31% of Bombay is pedestrian. They walk to work.
Hmm.
57 plus 31 कितना हो गया? 82%,
Okay.
83%.
Hmm. Hmm.
Then you forget about the buses and taxis and all that. वो भी है. Metro है
Hmm.
थोड़ा बहुत. The coastal road is 0.4% of Bombay's population. Who are you serving? Who are you making this commute easier for? 0.4% or the remaining 98 point whatever percent?
Hmm.
These are tough questions, man. I mean, you ask these questions and you start looking at infrastructure very differently.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
has anything been done about the local trains? No, because it's not a sexy project. People don't make money on double tracking local trains or taking the entire Indian Railways off grid and powering it with nuclear power or solar power or whatever.
Hmm.
They're not sexy projects, basically.
Correct, correct. So just taking that forward, where you said if you accept that you're into a violent profession, like what will happen to designers then? Like is schooling वैसा है, higher education वैसा है, practice वैसा है, पूरा pyramid है, तो like where do you look at this from a timeline perspective? Is it like 100 years out, 30 years out, or because of
No,
YouTube
it just
and
needs case studies, man. It just needs case studies. Like, so for example, if you had to say, assume, like, say, go with me on a thought journey right now. Assume the next 25 years, no new structures have to be built.
Hmm.
A blanket ban on construction because it is depleting the quality of air to a point where people cannot breathe. Not
Hmm.
too far to imagine, right? And
Yeah.
AQI of 400 is now acceptable in Delhi,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
तो the बच्चा मरेगा 20 साल पहले, लेकिन we will continue with the status quo.
Hmm.
Assume amazingly, whatever, egalitarian government comes up, votes, okay, no flights, no building. For 25 years, we replenish the ecosystem. Architects and designers do nothing, right? What are the options open to you then? Amazing skill, amazing aesthetics, can't build. तो क्या करेगा उसमें? You'll become a professional dismantler.
Hmm.
You'll become a craftsperson. You will start saying, okay, I have like these 50 buildings which have dilapidated. Can I dismantle their glass panes in a way that I can salvage each and every one of them? I will get a LiDAR scan of each and every one of them. I will make an inventory and Excel sheet, and I will then move them to 20 projects which are requiring glass of this size. I will
Hmm.
salvage each and every brick. I will salvage each and every rebar. I will have an extremely thriving recycling industry, which is able to tag and meta tag all these different elements of building. Right? No new virgin material created for the next 25 years. It is possible. It's just that we've stopped thinking this way.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right? Like
Hmm.
we're okay with emissions and we're okay with burning everything. I mean, if this overview effect happened, this is what we'd be doing. Architecture would be all about dismantling, all about adaptive reuse, no virgin material. Everyone's conscious of their carbon footprint. Like you would get awards for the least carbon footprint, for example. You would start
Hmm.
with 100 points and over your career, you go down. You don't go up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
When you graduate, you get 100 carbon credits. You go down to zero, you are disqualified. The zero could happen in one project. Like
Hmm.
Tadawando का carbon footprint सोचना कितना concrete पोत दिया है.
Correct, correct.
Now, suppose you stop celebrating the guy for his aesthetics and minimalism and you start asking questions about what's your carbon footprint. When you graduated from school, you had 100 points. Where are you now?
Hmm.
Like, this is the question that activists are asking from big oil and big pharma, right?
Tough
I
questions,
mean,
tough
it's going to
questions.
come from big construction as well.
Hmm. Very interesting.
Like, we
I
had
remember
this speculative award called the Leave No Footprint Award.
the game of
Leave No Footprint Award.
Oh,
So
Lean
it's
of.
actually printed out of atmospheric pollution,
Hmm.
sort of collected carbon in a wet filter and then molded into a award, which is like a footprint on the moon. That Neil Armstrong's footprint.
Hmm.
This kind of
Oh.
speculative award, which could be given to people for someone who's redeemed their carbon footprint. So you start with 100. make a few mistakes, go down to 20, 25, and you do one project that sequesters all the carbon dioxide that's required for your carbon credit to come to 100, and you get a special award for that. That would be a metric worth fighting for.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
Not
I
like
remember. No,
European
sorry.
minimalism in Alibag, and then they were, "Aye, kya banaya hai?"
Hmm. In fact, I'm in Singapore right now, and yeah, I'm going to come back to that question. But मुझे एक याद आया, like when I was talking with Uday Atwankar long time ago, and I said like, how do you encourage young students to like make better design? And he said, I don't exactly can't quote it, but he said something to that effect that sometimes we come up with a game saying that you design a game, and I'll give you like 100 rupees to design that game. So they design it, and then like once it's all done, now make the same game in 50 rupees, and then like 20 rupees, and then finally make it in like no money. Like just try without any money, make that game again. So it
Awesome.
obviously
Wow.
refines your thinking process also,
That's
and
great.
you're depleting
Ah,
any.
this is the kind of curriculum that you can get behind, right?
Yeah, yeah. Cool. And since you mentioned about this, last two questions is like your. I was going through your article, the issue pages on placelessness. So
Oh,
what provokes
wow.
you? Yeah, what provokes you to think of these future spaces? Like while I mean, we have still cows and camels on the road, and yeah,
Yeah.
I saw this one
I
very
mean, I hope we
funny.
have cows and camels on the road even 100 years from now.
You hope.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be.
Yeah,
It's fine.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
There have
No,
been
I
cows and
mean,
camels on the road for the last 5,000 years, so I don't think that much is going to change.
correct, correct. In fact, that's what like a connecting question was. Ki in my company, our CEO was talking about some conference. We are in prop tech, so Magic Bricks kind of an equivalent in Singapore and
Hmm.
Southeast Asia. So he was talking about there's a narrative called 15-minute cities. So
Hmm.
it's actually going back to the Gandhi concept that you build
Yeah.
everything close and nearby. So where are you on that, and like the placeness kind of thing? Placelessness, what is that?
So placelessness actually, it's an interesting idea. It kind of comes from, I mean, in some sense, the roots of the word come from this McDonaldization of spaces where everything looks the same. So
Hmm.
you could say like a mall in Singapore looks very similar to a mall in Bombay and may look very similar to a mall in Dubai, maybe.
Hmm.
They follow the
Yeah.
same kind of thing, and that placelessness of that particular kind of architecture is there to make you feel comfort and make you feel like you've been there before. McDonald's is standardized. You go to Tokyo, you go to a McDonald's, you'll be like, okay, I know. Creates a sense of comfort and familiarity in a new environment. So that's what most people gravitate towards, and it's a kind of a placebo in some sense. Like it kind of has this calming quality.
Hmm.
That's where placelessness, in some sense, started, right? In the design of these kind of very utilitarian environments, kind of sanitized environments. Now, what happens is eventually placelessness has followed us home, right? We get our placelessness instincts from Pinterest. Like you'll have a gym and a dentist office and a home and a restaurant and a barber shop all look the same
Hmm.
because there's something trending like some soft gold globes and some rounded forms and some vintage mirrors. All these things are trending, and suddenly everything looks the same over there.
Yeah.
So you have this kind of placelessness, which is like, I mean, to my mind, it's like the effect of having a Digene, when you have that soft pink Digene tablet,
Hmm. Hmm.
और
Hmm.
अंदर का acidity सब everything looks like.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I guess, I mean, so one is that this is the kind of reality we live in, and now what's happening is that the next placelessness, if it is a sense of comfort or say misplaced comfort in some sense given to us by architectural space, over time that is now going to be translated into virtual space. It's the data feeds that we get on our phones. It's our Pinterest and Instagram kind of feeds of aspirational environments. You'll start seeing very, very common trends across, 100 powder rooms all look the same. Uh,
Hmm.
whatever, 100 living rooms all look the same.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you'll have this kind of very background, pleasing, soothing, calming ASMR kind of environments, which
Hmm.
is essentially it's your Digene tablet because when you open the window, there is a ton of acidity outside. right?
Hmm.
You need that hygiene tablet to calm your immune system and your digestive system from the fact that you have not engaged in the city environment. There's a battlefield outside. You can go outside and pick your battle. But we choose to be in environments of placelessness, which are just neurologically calming us in some ways. They kind of,
Hmm.
they're the mental equivalent of having a hygiene, basically.
Correct, correct. You understand Marathi also, right? A little bit.
Very little, yeah.
Yeah, but do you know the word sapat?
Sapat. No,
Sapat.
no. Tell me
So
more.
sapat is like just flat, flat. It's
Oh, it's
your
exactly what
placeness.
it sounds like. Yeah.
Correct, correct. Yeah, it's basically I interviewed Atul Pete, who's a theater yeah, he's just a theater legend,
Uh,
and he spoke about like Belgaum, Pune, everything looks the same now, and
yeah.
it's kind of sapatikaran, which is sapat ho gaya, sab kuch flat ho gaya, right? Like sab same dikh raha hai.
Yeah.
There's no, and then we like venture out to Maldives or maybe Bali and like do the same shit there.
Yeah.
So you're like
No,
essentially
that's the thing. Like, I
flattening.
mean, you take these pictures of, someone on a swing on an idyllic beach and nobody in the frame, and there's this lovely pictures, and then you look at the back and there are 300 people waiting in line to take that same picture in the same space,
Yeah.
and the same illusion of nobody around. So there are people waiting nicely, 300 people waiting in line patiently for that one picture. I mean,
Yeah.
what better case to make for placelessness? That image. What does that image mean for to anyone, right?
Correct. Correct.
And why does it mean so much for that person who's sitting on the swing?
Yeah. In fact,
So
to
it's very.
extend it
Mhm.
further, वरुण ग्रोवर का ही एक I think I saw in one interview कि वो मतलब 2 घंटे रुक के भी like they'll stand in the line and then when they reach that place they are facing back because for the selfie, so they're not even looking at the shit properly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're in some
Yeah.
strange place right now. I mean, it's something to kind of. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all giving us insight into the human condition, and I feel like it's an important need that is being met in some ways. I think
Hmm.
the important questions to ask are what is that need and how can that be met in a different way from this kind of more extractive kind of a mindset, right?
Hmm.
If it can be met in a way that there's a human need to populate virgin landscapes, and how can the city offer us those kind of virgin experiences and experience of landscapes and experience of health and rejuvenation? Maybe every time you go back to Central Park, if you're living in New York, you have a very different experience depending on who you're going with, where you sit. There is a sense of place. There is a sense of place making in nature, right? Because nature follows seasonal cycles. Every time there is a new bird call, or there is a new kind of experience of walking on the grass barefoot, or there's a new experience of playing a game. Uh, that is mindfulness as against placelessness, where one could draw the sort of parallel and say, how could our cities make us more mindful people? How could our cities solicit the kind of behavior from its citizens which allows stewardship, like
Hmm.
allows us to be more responsible and more engaged with our city environments?
Correct, correct, correct. And then what? Where are you on this 15-minute cities kind of a concept? Are
Oh,
you
it's great. I
familiar
mean, I
with?
think it's a city designed around pedestrian activity, right? So it's
Hmm.
basically where can you walk to in 15 minutes and what are the kind of conveniences that you need, which is fantastic.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, I
And
think
then obviously we'll have like then that calls for like having cows also on the road. I mean, if that's the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
mentality and
for
that's the
sure.
worldview, it
No,
definitely makes sense.
a pedestrian city essentially, if you look at say Jane Jacobs' writing, I mean, a pedestrian city actually has more eyes on the street, right? Because more
Yes.
people are walking. It's a human scale city, so there are interactions across compound walls. You have
Hmm.
lower compound walls. You have more interaction between neighbors because there is a sense of trust. There are people you see walking by your street every day. There are unlocked doors. There are more trees because people need shade when they walk. There's a ripple effect of a 15-minute city, which is very interesting to study. It's not just the convenience, it's also the entire culture that it spawns. You will have
Culture.
street culture. You don't have people going from one place to the other in cars with rolled up windows and shouting to someone on the phone. You will have a situation where people are walking and engaging with each other. There's commerce on the street, there is street food, there is all these things enabled by a vibrant 15-minute city, which
Hmm.
we deny to ourselves when we design cities for cars.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right? Like,
Hmm.
what is your experience of the sea link and how is it enriching you every time you go on that road?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, forget about that walk through Bandra for 15 minutes. You'll probably have seen more interesting things than say 1.5 hours stuck on the sea link in traffic.
Correct. Correct. And plus
So,
giving
I
that
mean,
toll.
we've stopped asking our policymakers or planners these questions, like, that, like, how
Hmm.
is it going to increase my quality of life? Like, what is it going to do?
Hmm. Maybe what we can do is do another episode sometime where we can get into like actual collectives, like these three collectives, 3 or 4 collectives that you're part of. What happens on a day-to-day basis? Like, how are you connecting with these BMCs, and like what kind of, like, are you showing them PPTs, or are you like engaging in conversations, or are you dragging them to a well-designed place? I would love to know that, but maybe for a
Yeah, I mean, they're
fall,
both very,
fall.
they're all very different journeys. Like Bandra Collective has many stakeholders now. It's got people who are, more activist oriented, people who are more quick design oriented, people are more kind of, so
Hmm.
like Sameer, for example, what he does is a lot more crafted.
Hmm.
Uh, like what we do is a little bit more jugaad and rough around the edges and quick and fast and whatever.
Hmm.
So it's amazing working with this group of people. I mean, you get to see different offices, different work styles. It's super enriching for all of us, although no one makes any money from it. But uh,
Hmm.
I think that's the point. Like, I think if at the end of whatever, living on 65, 70 years, you want to look back and think about fun things that you've done, I think that would be higher on the list than um, winning an award for the most innovative bathroom or something.
Okay, cool. Well, last question is again little tactical in format. Is that now, given this entire conversation and the landscape that we are talking about, like what would you tell designers? Like what should, like uh, क्योंकि अगर if I'm like a young designer right now listening to this, I'm sort of a little clueless as to where to start from. What is this all different world altogether? I thought I'll be like joining a interior designer and like doing some stuff there, and probably trying my hands on AutoCAD and just mastering that tools, right? So
Yeah.
how would this speculative thought process, questioning, sit into the daily lives?
I mean, it's an added tool in your arsenal, really. I mean, if life is about accumulating more and more tools and more and more processes that you can use to, further yourself and your own practice, I would really kind of arrive at very early in my own practice that what brings me validation. It's a very base question to ask, and it requires a fair amount of introspection in terms of you may come up with uncomfortable answers. You may be like, okay, right now it's all about the money, right? Or right now it's all about the credit, and I want to be on every single top architect list, and I will do what it takes, and I will go to those parties, and I will have that wine, and I will, uh, schmooze and do whatever it takes to be on those lists. And but it comes with a certain amount of clarity that okay, this is what I want, and this is
Hmm.
what I want for the next 5 years, and I will then engineer my career towards it. You will select a certain kind of project, you'll make certain kind of relationships, and you will do that. I don't think we're living in that world anymore, completely honestly. I feel like we moved far beyond that world. It's just that we're not able to see it in front of us and it's not hit us hard enough as an industry. So we are still able to live in this kind of suspended reality. But we are in a extremely well-connected world. We are in a world where every day there are new advances in machine learning and artificial intelligence. Extremely exciting, but they're eroding away what it meant to be a designer in the
Hmm.
past, right? The onus of coming up with new connections and the onus of coming up with innovative new cool forms, that is already eroded, right?
Hmm.
If I today ask you to think about a building inspired by an open burger that has three dinosaurs growing out of it and is also functional as a hospital in the night. Maybe we may have a little tough time coming up with it, but in 40 seconds, Midjourney is able to spit out 10 options. You don't like any of those options, select more and you get 40 more.
Hmm. Hmm.
Novelty is not now a domain of design. We have to start asking better questions. We have to stop asking what is new. We have to start asking what is best,
Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Hmm. And how is it enriching my life? Like
Yeah,
actually at a
yeah,
very
yeah, absolutely.
fundamental level.
At a
Yeah.
fundamental level, like what is it doing to my quality of life? If I'm able to get all those awards, what is it going to do to my quality of life? And how is it going to change me and my practice? And what are the kind of relationships? There's a lot to learn from other disciplines. There is a lot to learn in the way a jazz musician conducts himself, right? These are people who have honed their craft. they have a certain intuitive understanding of their tool. It's very tough to separate an acoustic guitar from a little great jazz acoustic guitarist. No
Mm.
one is taking away from the hours of practice, the hours of labor, learning AutoCAD, sitting on the thing and learning your tools really, really well. Nobody's taking away from that. Nobody's saying you have to be this abstract thinker all the time, but there's a deep respect for learning the tools. But I think then deploying those tools in a way that you are able to build multiple voices, multiple projects, promiscuous collaborations with everyone. You should be able to collaborate with a lawyer. You should be able to collaborate with a doctor. You should be able to collaborate with, someone who's on the extreme right of your political views. You should be able to see common ground. And these are tools which are not taught to us. These are tools that exist as part of a mediation toolkit. These are tools that exist as part of any kind of therapeutics kind of arsenal. Like
Mm.
we're just not taught these tools. We don't know how to create collaborative networks and how to squash your ego to a point where you can listen. Right? So I
Yeah.
think these are fundamental tools that will change our design practice. Along with AutoCAD, learn mediation, learn how to work in groups.
Mm.
Learn how to ask humbly for work. Like I
Mm.
mean, like the first Bandra Collective project was we landed up in the H Ward office, and we met the municipal commissioner for H Ward, and we said, sir, फ्री में डिजाइन दे रहे हैं, आपके पास कुछ है काम दे दो. And he was like,
Mm.
मेरे पास 21 parks है,
Mm.
and the contract has already been awarded, tender भर दिया है. If you can go there and design those 21 parks with no increase in budget, take it and go and do. That's how the collective started. We designed like a bunch of parks around Bandra just by going and humbly asking, say, boss, like, I want to do this. And essentially, you're not showing any kind of commerce, right? You're showing intent that I
Mm.
want to contribute and I want to do this. And give me whatever work you have. Right. I mean, but then the validation network is different. Like, where are you getting your validation from? It's not then in the uh, whatever. It's not in the
Mainstream,
gloss.
mainstream.
It's
Yeah,
not in the
mainstream.
glossy magazines, basically. Yeah.
Correct, correct.
I mean, there are a lot of places to problematize our profession, and I feel, in some sense, extending the fool metaphor is very, very important to problematize what we do as designers.
Mm.
I mean, there's a very, very small difference between craft practitioners in our understanding of what craft is today from slave labor,
Mm-hmm. Mm.
right? There is, I would say, there's little or no difference between the way designers look at craftsmen and the way a plantation owner would look at a slave working on a sugarcane plantation.
Mm.
It's a
In fact,
disembodied set of hands,
yeah,
some dusty hands, कुछ काम कर रहा है, उसका शक्ल is not important. हाथ दिखाओ उसका हाथ.
correct, correct. In fact, हाँ मतलब we have grown a little bit more now. पहले तो सिर्फ कलर भर दो था और लोगो बड़ा कर दो. Now it's little refined, but yeah, because of the tools like AI, like whatever the overall revolution that is happening here, you correctly said that churning out stuff is not a problem. I think asking the right questions and uh, introspecting will be like a bigger challenge in the coming time as opposed to just shipping stuff, right? Like वो तो बन जाएगा, वो तो हो जाएगा, वो तो हो भी रहा है वैसे भी.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Cool. I think we can wrap on this note. In fact, this inspirational note, the last answer was really, really kind of inspiring. Thanks a lot, Ayaz, for giving your time. And as usual, it's wonderful talking to you. Like
Cheers,
to
man.
have you
Yeah, thank
again.
you. Thank you for having me again. Thank you.
And that's it from today's Gyan session. For show notes and more Gyan, visit audiogyan.com. And if you wish to connect with me, I am at Audiogyan Moments on Instagram. Until then, take care.